Nancy Drew Mystery Stories number 56, The 13th Pearl by Carolyn Keene. Copyright 1979, Simon & Schuster. Chapter 1, Mr. Moto. How would you girls like a drink of pearl powder? Nancy Drew asked her friends Bess and George. It's calcium and is guaranteed to cure anything that's wrong with you. The two girls laughed, sure that Nancy was joking. The attractive, blue-eyed, strawberry blonde sleuth shook her head. I'm not kidding. It's true. Bess, a slightly overweight blonde who, like the others, was 18 years old, made a face. You know how I like to eat, but powder made from pearls. George, to whom food meant little, was a slender, athletic-looking brunette. So far as I know, there's nothing wrong with me, so I'll pass. Well, Nancy, Bess urged, tell us what the joke is. Once more, Nancy insisted that pearl powder had been used extensively as a cure-all. In ancient Japan and other Asiatic and Oriental countries, it was very popular. Nowadays, physicians prescribe other medications, but pearl powder can still be purchased in certain pharmacies. George stopped smiling and looked intently at her friend. My guess is that you've started working on a new mystery, and it has something to do with pearls. Am I right? Yes, Nancy replied. There's a Japanese jeweler in town who's a specialist in repairing fine old pieces of jewelry. His name is Mr. Moto. Recently, he came to my dad asking for help on a mystery. Bess spoke up. But your dad isn't a detective. He's a lawyer. True, Nancy agreed. But in this case, a fantastic theft took place. Mr. Moto didn't want to go to the police because if the loss became known, he feared it might cause international complications. George took a deep breath. I'm hooked. Tell us more. Nancy told the girls that a large firm with offices all over the world might be involved. Bess interrupted. Is this very confidential? Very, Nancy replied. She went on to say that her father was unable to help with the case at the present time and had told Mr. Moto that Nancy was an amateur detective. Mr. Drew had suggested that the three girls start working on the mystery until he could take over. What did Mr. Moto say? Bess asked. He agreed. Great! George exclaimed. When shall we begin? Right now, Nancy replied. I'll tell Hannah where we're going. She was referring to the Drews' lovely housekeeper, who had acted as a mother to Nancy since she was 3 years old, and her own mother had passed away. At the moment, Hannah Gruen was in the kitchen baking a lemon meringue pie, which happened to be Mr. Drew's favorite dessert. Minutes later, the girls drove off in Nancy's sleek blue car to the center of River Heights. As they turned into a side street looking for the jewelry shop, Bess suddenly said, Oh, there it is! But what's happening? Nancy and George gazed at the front door of the shop. A young Asiatic man was racing from the store with a pearl necklace dangling from one hand. I'll bet he's a thief, George cried out. Let's nab him. But by the time Nancy stopped her car at the curb across from the jeweler's, the young man had jumped into an automobile and sped off in the opposite direction. Unfortunately, the car had been too far away for Nancy and the others to glimpse the number on the license plate. Oh dear, said Bess with a sigh. There was our chance to be heroines, and we lost it. Nancy was eager to see if Mr. Moto was all right, and hurried across the street into the shop. Bess and George followed. No one was inside, but in a few moments an elderly, kind-looking Japanese man came from a rear room. He smiled and bowed to the girls. "May I assist you?" he asked. Nancy spoke quickly. "We just saw a young man run from your shop with a pearl necklace in his hand. Did he buy it?" "No, I have been in the back room. I did not see or hear anyone." He looked into a display case, then clasped his hands in dismay. "It is gone! A very expensive necklace." Nancy, Bess, and George described the young man as best they could. Mr. Moto did not recognize him. "He was a thief indeed," the jeweler lamented. The girls expressed their sympathy, and Nancy asked Mr. Moto if he was going to call the police. The rather frail-looking jeweler shook his head. "Not now. I have a bigger problem on my mind." "I know," Nancy said, and introduced herself and the other girls. "You came to see my father about the theft of an unusual piece of jewelry. He told you that until he is free, we would work on your case." Mr. Moto frowned. The girls assumed that he was thinking, "What do they know about solving mysteries?" Bess spoke up at once and glibly told how many cases Nancy had successfully concluded. "And sometimes George and I helped her," she added. Mr. Moto stroked his chin. "Ah, so. Then I will tell you about my trouble. But you must promise to keep this matter to yourselves." Each girl said she would honor his secret. "I have a client named Mrs. Tanya Rossmeyer," the jeweler began. "She is a very wealthy lady and owns a great deal of expensive jewelry. Her most precious piece is a necklace of pearls. There are 12 on each side of a very large one, which has the luster of the moon. The strand is made of natural, not cultured pearls." "It must be worth a fortune!" Bess burst out. "It is," Mr. Moto agreed. "I believe there is no other one like it in the world." Nancy asked him about the theft. "Someone entered my shop and opened the safe," Mr. Moto replied. "He cut off the 13th pearl from the rest of the strand. Mrs. Rossmeyer will be very angry and sue me for a lot of money. I will lose my insurance and will be forced to close my shop." The 3 girls were surprised that the burglar had cut only 1 pearl from the necklace. How much easier it would have been to steal the whole thing. Nancy said, "Would you let us see the part of the necklace that you still have?" The jeweler obligingly opened the safe, which was built into the counter and was well hidden from view. Nancy thought, "A casual customer would not realize this is a safe. The thief must have been somebody who knows about it, besides being an expert safecracker." Mr. Moto twirled the dials of the lock left and right, then opened the heavy door. Inside were many small drawers. He pulled one out and reached in for the pearl necklace. "You see where—" he began, then stared at the strand before him. Finally, he cried out, "This is not Mrs. Rossmeyer's necklace! The thief substituted this one. These are smaller than Mrs. Rossmeyer's pearls. Oh, she—" The jeweler suddenly put a hand in his pocket, then fainted, sinking to the floor. The girls ran behind the counter. Nancy and Bess picked him up and carried him to the back room. "George, shut the front door and lock it," Nancy called out. After putting Mr. Moto on a couch, she felt in his pocket where he had put his hand, and she discovered a small bottle of heart tablets. Quickly, she placed one under the man's tongue. "Don't you think we should call a doctor?" Bess asked worriedly. Nancy thought that Mr. Moto probably had attacks like this from time to time and carried the special pills for that reason. If he doesn't revive in a few minutes, then we'd better call an ambulance. George had locked the front door and had gone behind the counter. She restored the pearl necklace to the safe and closed the heavy door. Then she twirled the knob back and forth and tried the handle. The safe was locked. By this time, Mr. Moto had recovered in the back room, but was glad to lie on the couch. He insisted he did not need a doctor, but asked the girls not to leave him for a while. George reported that she had locked everything, and he thanked her. "You are most kind," he said. "When I first noticed that the 13th Pearl was gone, I was so excited that I did not examine the rest of the necklace. Now I know the substitute is not nearly as valuable as the stolen one. Oh, what shall I do?" Nancy suggested that Mr. Moto lie still until he felt completely well. He agreed and used this time to tell them the full story of what he suspected had happened. "I believe the thief who was here is working for an international organization called Worldwide Gems Incorporated, which deals in old and rare jewelry. Recently, it has been hinted in the trade that an underworld organization has infiltrated Worldwide Gems. This does not mean that the whole company is dishonest, but it is felt that certain employees are not above stealing. No one dares accuse Worldwide Gems, since it might stir up real trouble and even cause bloodshed at the hands of the powerful underworld group." "But why did the thief leave the substitute necklace?" George asked, puzzled. "Probably he did not want to leave that compartment in my safe empty. With the other necklace in it, I might not have noticed the loss for a while," Mr. Moto replied. "Where is Worldwide Gems located?" Nancy inquired. "They have branches in many big cities all over the world," Mr. Moto replied. "You can see that an investigation of them would cause many problems." "Yes, it would," came the stern voice of an unseen man. "You'd better forget the whole thing if you value your life." Mr. Moto and the girls were startled. Nancy and her friends jumped up and ran to the back door from where the voice had seemed to originate. No one was there. Puzzled, they searched the premises inside and out, but in vain. It was as if a ghost had spoken. Bess shivered. "This is positively spooky." End of chapter 1.